Hey YouTube, this is Curse, and today I'm going to be showing you how to set up the bone structure for the model. If you've already seen from importing, the bone structure is, well, all over the place. We're going to be getting the bone structure back into the character. If you're wondering how I got the bones to show back up, at the bottom left-hand corner, you just click the bone visibility button. Over here, we're on vertex select mode, so we don't want the vertices, we want bones, which is the third button. Now, I'm going to be moving around the camera a bit. If you're wondering, you just hold down the middle mouse wheel and drag. But anyway, we need to get all these points organized and out of the way. So if you look, you've got 8 sets of points here, which make its own structure. I already know what the structure is from messing with the character before, but I believe those are all the points, if I am looking correctly. Should be able to drag it out of the way. Yep. I'm just going to get this out of the way for now, because I know what it is. My recommendation is to organize the bone chains. The central bone, if you want to find it, it is in the dead center in the very middle. The way I work with this is I drag it right above the character's head. Is that a good idea? I don't know. But that's where I leave it. You can put it wherever you want, although I recommend leaving it on the Y line. So use only the green arrow to move it. Anyway, we know these are legs over here. These points back here, behind the legs, don't have any reason, they're not attached to anything. Neither does this point over here. Basically what I'm trying to do is get every point that has potentially no use out of the way. If it does have a use, we'll get it back later. So those are out. So are these two over here. And then these two also seem to have no use. This one is directly connected to one of the arm bones and shows up in every character. It is actually somewhat necessary. But, I mean, you could move it out of the way, to be completely honest. This setup right here doesn't even make sense to be anything. So these bones have no use, as of right now. I mean, almost all the bones actually have a use, but not enough reason to keep them there. They can easily be organized later. If you look, this is what the character's starting to look like. Potentially a decent organized set of bones, or just a bigger mess. But you'll see what this begins to look like the moment I get some of these more out of the way. I'm also going to move these two because I don't think they're relevant currently. And now if I zoom out and organize these just a little bit better, make them slightly less all over the place. There. Now you've got a pile of bones back there, which have no use. Extra bones over here, and then if you look over here... Oh wait, I'm going to get this out of the way first. If you look, this looks a bit like the character, doesn't it? Except for flipped a little bit. Yes, that's what it does. So if you find a position where you can select the entire group of bones in a square without selecting any other bone, then you're going to want to click and drag a box around it. Now, these are the rotational circles which you can use to rotate the bone structure. Rotate the camera so that all these lines are perfectly straight, and then use the blue circle to stand the character set of bones up. You're just going to want to look for patterns in the pixels that you can tell it's completely stood straight up. For example, like right at the wrist, it's at that line, but that wrist isn't. So you're going to want to rotate it further so that both are about at that line. Let's see, I'm going to see if I can attempt that. And that is about as close as you can get. Both wrists are at the line. Now you're going to want to rotate it in a circle using the green one, which rotates it around the y-axis. If this doesn't make any sense, it's rotating around the axis color you use. So you use the blue, which is the z-axis, to rotate around vertical. You use the red to rotate around not vertical, front and back, and you use the red to rotate around left and right. You use the green to rotate around top to bottom. Anyway, now that you have the bones rotated correctly, you're going to want to line them up with the model. Now, I've already moved my camera, so that's not going to be that great to line up. I'm going to use the same tactic I just used for the bones to line up the camera again. I'm using the top of the head. Now it's lined up vertically, so I know that if I line it up with the character, it's about as lined up as I can get. Or if I line it up with the axes or something, because it is in the center. Okay, now I've lined it up in the axes by using these 2 points. They're right up against the line. I now can rotate my camera and move it vertically, which you're going to want to try to get it on the ground or so, or line it up with the hands. Actually, the hands are usually the best to line it up with because the hands are such a small object. You're going to want to get the thumb in the thumb and the 2 fingers, although the 3rd finger is actually a combination of 2 fingers, as you can see here. So you're only going to want to line up the first 3 fingers, which I think they're adequately lined up here. I'm just going to check vertically. They could maybe use to go down just a little bit. No, actually, the arms are correct. Well, okay. That works well enough. I would say all the points are correct. And now the bones are starting to fall into place. Now, for these bones here, and the rest of all the other bones, you're going to have to know what they do to make sure you know they go in the right spot. To do that, we're going to go to View and hit Transform View. This is going to bring up an option here. You can also click that with the T right here, but I just use View Transform View because it's kind of quick. I'm going to change the selector to the drag a box and have the bone. Now, I'm going to want to figure out which way this section goes here. To do so, I'm going to pick a specific point and move it. Okay, so you know this one is the front one of the 2 on this side, which means if you were to take this as a whole and rotate this entire thing around, I think, actually, wait a second, this was in the front, correct? It was this one in the front. Yes. If you rotate that around about 90 degrees this way, which I'm going to do here, again, lining up the screen coordinates. Say that's about lined up. Anyway, you can now take that, and if you go back to Transform View, it updates. Now if you take this again and rotate it, it's the correct one. If you rotate the one behind it, you're going to see it's the object behind it that rotates. Well, sort of. It's rotating with it, I think. I don't quite understand exactly how this sort of thing works. This is more of a confusing mesh right here, but anyway, I'm going to now line it up with those 4 spots. I'm getting in close enough so I can line it up decently well. And then line it up around the central points. I mean, this doesn't have to be perfect, especially since these don't have definitive like location structure. So wherever you think it actually works, then put it there. This requires testing, and I don't exactly know where they go fully, because I don't know where they were envisioned to go. But it just takes a little bit of testing and looking, and I would say that's probably about right. The best tip is to have it right at the fold, so around the top of it is where you're going to want to have the points. So now if you look, the character's got its basic structure set up. Now, the rest of the bones, they're a bit more confusing than really they're worth. Now, as I said before in a previous tutorial, some of these bones can be deleted. All the ones that I've put on are necessary bones. But, yeah, see if you see they attach over here. I'm going to move one to show you. But all the ones, as I mentioned, all these over here are necessary bones. The ones attached, if you want, fiddle with them and see if everything moves correctly. I mean, it may look a little weird, but that's what happens with the character and such. It's not perfect. Oh, I think that would explain my issue with my model. I was having physics issues. It seems like the backbone moves both of the 2, while the front bone only moves the front. So the back one's moving, and the front one is, which moves that one twice. Okay, that would make sense. Anyway, go back to your informational view and go to the 5th tab or the Bones tab. Anything that says Attack Sphere, you can click it and hit Delete or hit the X at the bottom. I'm going to show you both work. I just hit Delete there, now I'm going to hit the X. It removes it. Also, collision sphere. The easiest way to find them, they're in all caps. Now make sure it's collision spheres and attack spheres. Those are the only ones you're going to want to delete. Now, we're down to 65. But if you look, there go 2 over there and 3 over here. Now we really only have to work with about 7 or so other bones. Maybe 8. Now we're going to have to figure out what each of them does. To do so, you just click it and drag it. Okay, the head nub has absolutely no use other than rotating the head. I'm going to check this one right here. This at the top moves the upper body. Now, here's the odd thing. We don't want to move the upper body where the neck is. We want to move it lower. So I'm going to lower the upper body. Now it's more towards the location of the upper body, although I'm going to put it in the central area of the upper body. Now if you look over here, the head nub, that thing over there. Oh, by the way, I'm moving all of these in the PMX view and then checking them in the transform view is the best way to do this. If you move them in the transform view, it's not going to move in the PMX. So now I'm going to put this where the neck is supposed to go. I'm getting the character lined up or so in the center. And then I'm going to line up the neck towards the central area. You're going to want to line up it around the central area of the neck. Not the central area of the head, but where the neck is. I'm going to click it and go over to this spot. And if you click a bone in PMX when it's on the bone tab over here, it will give it the 3 values over here. So right now it's height. Oh no, actually, I stand corrected. This is the X value, I believe. This is the Y value and then the Z value. I'm going to reset it by clicking a different bone, then clicking it again. That will reset the values. Anyway, if you look, negative 0.01 for the X, 15 for the Y, and 0.4 for the Z. This is 0.01, or negative 0.01, so I'm just going to change it to 0. Hit enter, and then click a different bone, and then click it again. Now if you go back to PMX view, it's in the dead center. Now, of course, it's not going to do anything, but the way bones work is they have other bones connected to them. So now if you look in the transform view, you've got the upper body here, which now moves it as of that bone, and then the neck, which doesn't do anything currently. But we're going to make them do stuff soon. Now we've got all these bones over here. I'm going to work down, starting from the top. If I move this, we have the hair move. Okay, that's important. We have the lower body move here. Now I'm going to try to locate the head. That is the hair, the other part of the hair. I need to locate the head, though. Nope. Just move them and then Control Z until you find the one that is the head. I don't think that has a use, but again, keep it on there. Here we go. So the face is the unmarked one right next to the center of the mesh. It's the one closest to another bone, and then the hair is at the top. I'll locate them in this. The head was there, and the hair is there. Move them forward and out of the way, and then prepare for positioning them. I'm going to position them near the neck position, or the neck sphere. Now, the way these work is these are going to become invisible bones. You're not going to see them in MMD, but they're still going to be working. They move when another bone is moved. So what you're going to want to do is select both of these in the PMX and go over to the informational view. Now, if you notice, you have both selected. Watch, if I select a different bone and then go back here and drag a selection, it will select both of them. Now, the 4th button over here represents visibility. If you click it, they will become invisible. For now, we're going to keep them on. These two represent how they're connected to other bones. This represents their target bone, which means they move if the target bone moves. You can also move them on their own if they're not invisible, but they will be invisible, so the only way to move them, we're going to make it through that neck bone, which will make them move in sync. The reason this works, and that they don't have to be directly on top of the bone, is because you're moving them on an orbital axis around, along with rotating them at the same time. So as you do that and rotate them, it will keep the object in the center, for example, the head and the hair, despite the fact the bones are in two different locations. I will show you how that works shortly. For now, we want to make sure we have the ID correct, which is the number of this bone. We click the head nub thing, and it's 15. We need to remember 15. Select these two again, and set the target to 15. The way I found that out is I click this, and on the right or on the left, just 15 right there. Again, select these and type in 15. You don't want to target, and now set them invisible. If you look back, you just see the head nub. If you go over to transform view, they will have disappeared, and if you move this, the head moves. It moves on the neck axis too, based on the fact that you put the bone in the neck. Now, the head is working correctly. If you want, check out other pieces, such as the arms. The arms also seem to be working correctly. You can also try out the fingers if you want. I mean, you can kind of do whichever piece you want to try out. Right now, the legs are basic, and they don't have an anchor, so the only anchor is the center. We're going to fix that later, but that's a lot more complicated, and that will require an episode dedicated just to that. Anyway, we've got a little bit more work to do. This is the lower body. Yeah, what we're going to have to do is associate certain bones with either an upper or lower body. This is definitely upper, but I can't figure out what else is... Oh, okay, it's moving both the neck and the hair. But if I recall, well, you can either decide whether the hair moves with the head or it stays on the back and moves with the body. For example, in my opinion, it looks better when it moves on its own based on staying right there, as compared to moving with the head. So I'm going to leave the hair separate, and I'm pretty sure that makes this bone, which... Nope, that's the lower body bone. It makes this bone over here, which moves the neck and the hair, mostly obsolete. No, actually, it's not. Stand corrected. Sorry. If it doesn't look like I know what I'm talking about, it's just because the bones are still a little confusing to me. But if you follow along, I hope it should be fine. So now what we're going to want to do is, I believe this is an upper body right here. This one that we moved down from the neck moves part of the upper body. Okay, that moves the head along with everything. That's what we need. So now we're going to want to center this. So go over to the PMX view and select it. Now go over to your bone view and change the X value to 0. Select a different bone, select it again. And now I'm going to set, for example, the height to, I think, 13.5. I'm just rounding the value. It was like 13.43, so I changed it to 13.5. And I'm also going to change that to 0.2. Make the values a little bit easier to work with. Now, let's see. If I were to change this value to 14, where would it move? Up there. Okay, a bit too unorganized for me. So I put it to 14, it goes there. So I'm going to set it to 13. My logic is I need enough room for a bone 1 unit above. So actually, I'm going to set it to 0.25 because I also need room for 2 units below. If this doesn't look like I know what I'm talking about, then sorry about that. But it's just positioning so that you can have 4 bones in a row, all spaced 1 apart, is the way I organize this. You can have them organized differently, but this is the way I organize it. See how this bone has a line connecting to there, the arm, even though it doesn't necessarily move the arm, it moves the whole upper body? We're going to remove that line. This is the target line. If you set it to -1, it does not have a bone attached to it. It still moves everything attached to it, but it does not have a visible bone line. You can see by it still rotates the same stuff. Now, we're going to need to find in the transform view the upper body, what moves over here and the arms. That moves the entirety of the body, but what moves along with it? This bone here. So now if we track this bone down, this moves the entirety of the upper body. That is spine 1. This object here, I need to check to see what this one is. That is neck. Okay, we've come into a predicament here. If you notice, spine 1 is above neck, but we've set neck to be the second bone down. We're going to have to move neck up a little bit to make room for the spine. So I'm going to set it to 14.25. This is why I work with the raising the values by 1, so that now I can go and take spine, which should be this one here, and then go change its values to 0. If you remember, the other ones were 0, 13.25, and then 0.2. And now if I go check, it's right below the bone that moves just the arms. If you notice, it moves the arms. So now if I go out and test it, it moves the entire upper body based on its location. That's what we need. We don't want to be able to just move the arms and the head, though, because it looks an unnatural movement, especially when you turn fully around. It does not look right at all. So we don't want that bone to be able to be accessed. We're going to find that bone. We're going to make it invisible, and then people won't be able to use it, but we're going to use it as a line marker. So now, if you select this bone here, which is bone 12, and then select the bone above it, bone 13, set the draw a line from 12 to 13. Now there's a line between them connecting them. It doesn't mean anything other than when you turn this bone invisible, select it and turn off visibility with the 4th button here, it will now not show a thing. Now when you go over to the transform view, if you turn this bone, it turns that. But you can't access the bone on top to turn it. Turn the rest unnaturally. So now, we've got the upper body working, the arms and all that, the head, the hair should work too. I haven't checked that yet. The hair works in general. And then the feet worked. Now we need to locate the rest of the bones and see what they do. This top one here moves the lower body. We're going to have to use that one and make a lower body section just like the top body. This one is one of those bones, as I mentioned before, we don't need it. It's just more annoying than it's worth. We don't want people to be able to use it. So to do that, we're just going to move it close to the character. It's near the head. It's called head. So I'm just moving it to up here, selecting it, and turning its visibility off. It's still connected. It will still move. For example, it moved when this here moved. So it still moves, but now it's no longer in the way and nobody can mess with it. It makes the model more natural. Now, this is the lower body. This is going to be needed to be paired up with, I think, with some sort of leg part. I'm going to check to see if it exists. Yes, it exists somewhere. I have to find it. That would be part of the lower body, I think. Yep. Little tip. In the bone lists, you're going to have spine and spine 1. Spine 1 is usually upper body, and spine is usually the lower body. So we already know what spine is now, which is here. We're going to locate spine in the PMX view. Oops. Sorry about that. We're going to go to the view, and we are going to set its location. If you recall, the 3 numbers were 0. It was 13.25, so now we're going to do 12.25, and then 0.2, enter, change bone, go back. Now if you look over here, you've got the lower body here. It's also got a piece of line connecting to the bone right above it. You can either keep that or you can get rid of it. I don't like it, to be honest, so I'm going to get rid of it by putting a -1 in its target. Now if you look, it's also there, and if you move it, it will move just the central body. Now, if you recall, it was also this bone, the other part of the lower body. We're going to move this, select it, go change its values again to 0, 11.25, again subtracting 1, and then 0.2, enter, change the bone. You don't necessarily have to hit enter, but I find it works a bit better. Now if you look, now you have 4 in a row. We're going to set this one's target to the one below it. So, this is 55. We're drawing a bone to 54. Oh, wait a second. We have an issue. If you look over here, 54 isn't connected to anything. Its target is -1. You don't want a bone with a target of -1. If we set the bone's target to, for example, this one, which is 55, we're going to set target 54 to 55. I'm going to show you what happens when you set it to a bone lower than it. It comes up red, and in the transform view, The bone renders an after, which it means it moves all the parts attached to it to the origin of 0. You don't want that to happen. So to do that, to fix that, you're going to have to select spine 1 and move it above the other one. So now, confusingly, spine 1 is attached to the cache low body. You're going to instead want to connect this to 1. 1 is the actually no, 0 is the representation of the center. So 0 represents the center. It only moves in accordance with the center. Now we're going to go to transform view. I know that probably didn't make too much sense, but the only reason we want this bone to move is if you move the character. If you have any other bone move this bone, you're going to have the lower body moving at random times, which you don't want. Any bone that only moves because of itself, you set to center. Any bone that connects to it, you set that bone to what it should move with. That's how the whole target system works. If we go to the transform view, remember that there's supposed to be a line connecting these two. I haven't quite done that yet. I'm actually going to do that right now, make it easier. Select the bone you want to draw the line from. Remember that 55 connected to 54 from before. So we're going to set the target in the line to 55. And now we're going to set the visibility on the lower one to invisible. Go to transform view. And if you move it, it's all but where the feet connect. But that also leaves us with only 3 bones with no use. If you look, this is 1. 1 is the bone where multiple things are connected, but they probably shouldn't be. But just to save us time, we're going to go to the PMX view. We're going to find that bone 1, make it invisible, and move it anywhere. Again, it's moving in relativity towards that bone, so it makes no difference. We're going to take that bone. An invisible bone in MMD causes an issue. If you turn it invisible when it has a target, that line after it disappears. In MMD, it remains. So you don't want that. You're going to want to make it visible, and for some reason it reset its location. It will do that a lot, especially when you change its visibility. Just put it anywhere. Select it. I'm going to put it here. Change bones again. Okay, I'm going to select it. Set its visible target to -1 and set its physical target to 0, to the center. That is so that everything attached to it moves with when the center moves. Now I'm going to take this and make it now invisible. We go to transform view. It's now gone, invisible, but when you move the center, it moves everything but these pieces here, which are probably what the other 2 bones are, because they're not associated with anything. Now if we move what these are, you will see one that doesn't do anything, and one that moves one of the pieces we were missing. So now I'm going to take this one, which is this one here, and move it to the central area where the part that moves the lower body is. We're going to want to associate this bone with the target of either of these 2. I'm just going to pick the top one because it's easy, because it's visible. Click it, find out its ID, it is 64, and then the spine we want to connect it to is 54, so I'm going to set its target to 54, and there. We don't want people to be able to move it on its own, so I'm setting it invisible. And now, when you move the center, it should move all but... Nope, we do have an issue. The lower body with the legs don't want to move. Now, that could be potentially just because the legs themselves don't want to move. I'm going to check the targets of the legs. So to do that, I click the leg, the top of the legs, and go over here. They're connected to 55, which is connected to 54, which is connected to 0. I'm having difficulty believing that, because I don't think they're moving with it. Are they? Yeah, they're not moving with it. So again, I need to check what the legs are. Here we go, this is why. They're connected to 1. They connect to 1, that is not what we need. So we have an issue here. We're going to want to take spine and spine 1 and move them to the top of the list. To do that, click it and just keep clicking the up arrow. It looks bugged when it moves all the bones, but it will fix itself. We're going to want to set these to 3 and 4. I don't remember which one has to go above the other. I will check based on, I believe low body has to go above the up body. So then I think... Now, if you click it again, it will reset itself. Now, if we go to transform view, everything should still be in place. But now we can associate the legs with the rest. Click the leg, and now we have an ID of 9 and an ID of 4. We're going to want to connect these to ID 2. So click it, set the ID 2. Click it, set the target ID 2. If we go to the transform view and you move this part, now you have the entirety of the lower body moving when you turn it. That's exactly what we need to do, and now we have one extra bone which has no use. Again, as I said, don't delete bones that look like they have no use, because they very well do have a use, you're just not seeing it by moving it on its own. So again, I'm going to set it above the head, select it, go over here, set its target to -1. This is kind of a hint that it doesn't really do anything when its target is -1 and it doesn't move much, but I'm still going to set its target to 0 and make it invisible. You probably could have deleted it at that point, but just to be on the safe side, I'm not going to. Anyway, for last-minute touch-ups, you're going to want to make the tips of the fingers invisible. This is because you don't need to move the tips of the fingers. If you move the tips of the fingers, absolutely nothing happens. Another case where you probably could have deleted it, but you're going to want to select them, and then turn them invisible. I'm going to do that with all of them. I probably could have just shift-clicked them. Shift-click, etc. Turn off. And then do so with the tips of the toes. And then the sides of the whatever that is. And then the tips of the hair. These can all be turned off. Now I'm going to file, save. Again, it's making me pick a different name. I would recommend doing _3 now, just like that. But I'm just going to save it as the same thing because I'm having results saved. Anyway, now this is bone structure. Anything you move in the transform view should move like a normal character. And in the next episode, I'm going to be going over more in-depth on bone placement and order, and then how to rename bones, potentially for compatibility, but just the basics of it. I don't fully understand how it works, so I can't really explain it. And soon enough, I'm going to be explaining how to get the legs to work. There are some bones in the legs that need to be worked out, but we'll get to it later. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll be back soon with a new tutorial explaining what I just explained. Please comment, like, rate, subscribe, and thanks for watching.